Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Attack on Titan Season 3 review. This one's going to be for Season 3 Episode 19, which is called The Basement. So this is kind of what we've been waiting for a pretty long time. And we get a hint of it right at the end, but kind of as I think we suspected, we will be sort of left waiting with this episode to see exactly what kind of comes of it, in that, you know, what they revealed at the end is interesting. It's obviously setting stuff up. You know, we're going to be getting Grisha Yeager backstory going forward, but what they revealed in this episode is kind of roughly what we knew already. We knew, I think, already that there was another place and beyond just the walls, and this kind of confirms it. Now we're going to get the big reveal we've been waiting for. So before that, we do have a decent amount of stuff that happens, even if, again, I think it's not the most eventful episode. It is kind of finally a time to just kind of calm down, cool off after the craziness that happened over the last 3 episodes. And we, of course, have to start off with the fact that Armin is very changed, as just with everything that happened. He is now a Titan shifter, and because of that, he doesn't remember recent events, but he has the memories of Bertolt. That's the kind of idea that we have here. That it was roughly a thing I think they've established, that you do gain the memories of like the previous person that you ate. So that's an interesting thing. Eren has to reveal everything that happened to him. That there's only like 9 members of the Scouting Legion left, and that he was chosen to get the Titan injection ahead of Erwin. And, you know, it's a pretty emotional one, as they discuss, you know, they kind of, again, in the aftermath of this, they've all accepted the decision, but they're like, Armin, you have a lot to live up to because you were chosen ahead of Erwin. You can't ever be him, you can't replace him, but you have to do everything you can in your power. Use the unique abilities that you have to, you know, be worthy of this decision. And Levi does kind of take a lot of it on himself, and that, like, ultimately it was my decision. I chose Armin, and I think it'll be okay. So we end up with, I suppose, the idea that Armin is now, I suppose, more officially in a more leadership position in the Scouting Legion. I don't think they specifically gave him a rank here, but it seems like Hanji is the new kind of head of the Scouting Legion, and Armin is going to be kind of there with her. So those two, I assume, are going to be very, very impressive as the kind of leads of the Scouting Legion, and then Levi is going to be more of the kind of frontline fighter leader guy. And in that sense, you have 3 very, I think, solid people at the head of the Scouting Legion now, even if they're missing the kind of raw charisma, leadership ability of Erwin. So that was nice, I think, to get. And then very quickly in the aftermath of this, they do just go straight on to, let's go to the basement. And I like the kind of journey through Shiganshina to get there with the reflection of the past. I thought visually they did it really nicely, of like, this is a incredibly emotional thing for Mikasa and Eren to finally return here. And return here back to kind of where we wanted to get to for such a long time. So then visually showing, you know, their younger selves kind of from the past as present day themselves are kind of, you know, walking through the same streets was, I think, really well done. I like that Hanji and Levi were kind of quiet during all of this. They just, you know, quietly followed behind. And then they finally get there. You know, the house that, of course, was hit by a big boulder, but the entrance to the basement is there, and there's not too much damage to it. So they go in. There's a bunch of little kind of twists along the way of like, oh, the key doesn't fit initially, but then, of course, it's just a wooden door. So Levi just breaks it down. Then as they search, it seems to just be like a doctor's office. But then Mikasa finds a secret kind of keyhole. Eren opens it up. It's an empty drawer. Levi then finds out it actually has a false bottom, and that's where they discover the 3 books, which are like the 3 journals, pieces of information that Grisha left behind. And I suppose that's what these flashbacks are going to be. These are the detailed diaries, I suppose, that he left behind. That's where this flashback is going to come from. And that's, I think, very cool, because what we get in this episode is initially here the focus of them just on the what appears to be a portrait, what they consider to be a portrait, we know as a picture, a photo. They have to learn what a photograph is, because that isn't a piece of technology that they have right now. So that's what's explained on the back, that, it's a photograph. It uses this kind of chemical process, reflected light, to form this image very accurately. And that he says that he comes from a world beyond the walls, where humanity's thriving and is actually better off than inside the walls. Which, for those characters, is something, that's a huge, huge, huge moment to get that reveal that it was all true. Basically, Erwin's dreams were true, and you get those little shots of Erwin as well here, and I thought it worked really well, even though I think we as the audience already knew about this. We basically knew there was a place outside the walls already, because of stuff I think the little bits on Grisha we got from before, and just some of the details about the backstory we got in the first part of season 3, and so on. We knew that this kind of was the case, plus a lot of the suggestions about like Annie, Reiner, and Bertold, and like where they're from, what they're doing, basically. It all sort of came together here, and now we're going to get an insight through Grisha's backstory into what the place beyond the walls actually is. So the bits that we get is that he leaves the house with his younger sister. They say goodbye to their mother. They're told specifically that they have to keep their specific armbands on. It's revealed that, there's airships above their heads. It's not like crazy high technology, like there's just a like crazy, like unbelievably massive gulf in technology that like is impossible to bridge, in that like the maneuver gear, like, okay, it's nowhere near as advanced as an airship, but like it's not like we're suddenly in like the future here. It's just a clear distinction in technology between one and the other, with airships sort of being the main thing, and then obviously soldiers that seem to have just like actual guns, and just the way everything is, it seems just a much more modern, updated. There is a wall there, and I think the idea is that they are being kept inside this specific wall. Again, we don't know the reasoning behind it right now, but his sister says that she wants to, at some point, go on one of these airships and, see what it's like to view the world from that perspective. And Grisha seems to know a little bit more and talk about how, we can't ever get to the point where we're rich enough to be on an airship. It's an impossibility for us. But then sees the gap at the kind of at the gap of the wall, and just runs through, and they're chased after. And the idea is that the story starts at this point, that Grisha, the story he wants to tell to whoever finds these books, has to start with this specific day and what happens here. So that's very, very interesting to see what they kind of do here, what the dynamic is. Why are these people being kept inside this sort of, segregated area with these gates? What's going on here is the question. And how does this relate to Titans and all this other sort of stuff? We're not entirely sure, but I think based on what we know, like trying to piece it all together, one thing we know is that like effectively like all Titans originate as humans. So the question is, how are there so many, I suppose, mindless Titans who don't have one of the special powers to allow them to be Titan shifters? Where do they all come from, I suppose, effectively? Like, I don't think we have a great sense of the scope of the world right now in terms of, like, land masses and, like, when you go onwards past the wall, like, what are we talking about here in terms of like ocean type things? Because that's one of the like images that they've been teasing this season with, is like the characters in the ocean. So I assume the idea is at some point they go past the outer wall and eventually find the edge of the land and the ocean, and probably see this other place far across the ocean. And it's this, for them, this huge sense of like they lived inside a cage, that they didn't know there was more out there, and now they're learning that there is more out there, but that there's problems there as well. And then the question comes up of like, okay, if this place is actually the place where like Bertold, Reiner, Zeke, and so on are from, what is the connection of the, I suppose, special Titan powers and stuff like that to that area versus the ones inside the walls? And just all these situations of like that begs the question then, okay, like why were the walls formed here in this specific spot? What's going on here? There's questions that kind of arise up because of this, but it seems like we're finally going to get to some answers here. So this backstory looks set to be the big thing. We got some nice backstory about like the different Titan powers towards the end of the first half of the season, but now we're going to get the, I suppose, full story about the world and how it is, and it so far seems very good. We'll have to see how it is, but this has been what the series has sort of been building towards for a long time in its mystery. Now it's time to deliver on it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on this episode. It's a little bit one of those ones where like I wish like the episode called The Basement would have been the one to just go all out with everything. They did what they could because they had to be set up towards it, but they're setting up that at least a couple of episodes here at the end of this season we're going to be focused on backstory, and I assume in the aftermath of that backstory heading out past the walls and seeing what's going on. The other situation here is that with the walls reclaimed and I suppose the advancements in technology that they've already had here, clearing up Titans shouldn't be too much of a problem. So it might just take time, but that they could get into a situation where it actually is safe to just roam around in the different kind of sections in between the walls, because like, okay, you have a fairly low scouting legion, but with the thunder spears, the sort of automatic kind of emplacements that they have on the walls and stuff like that, they can now take out Titans kind of whenever they want. So there's only going to be a certain amount of Titans. Obviously they will run out eventually. And now that the kind of hero characters are in this sort of a kind of state, especially if they use Armin now and Eren, I think the Titan problem that we sort of started the series with is not really a thing anymore, and we're really shifting from Eren wants revenge against all the Titans to now suddenly, okay, now we're sort of left with this kind of political situation. What's going on between the walled area and then this other human area, and how did the special Titan powers, the founding Titan power, fit into all of that? So they're the real questions. But yeah, that's been the review. Thanks for watching, and bye.